Winter is closing in fast, and on a remote gold claim in the northern bush, one mining boss is staring down a number that could define his entire season. 10,000 ounces. With less than 2 weeks of workable ground left before the freeze locks everything down, the math is brutal. The machines are breaking, and the pressure inside this camp has never been higher. Deep in the Yukon backcountry, 34-year-old mine boss Cole Whitfield has spent the last 6 months pushing his crew and his equipment to the absolute limit. He inherited this ground from his father, a man who chased gold on these same hills for 3 decades and never once broke 5 figures a season. Cole wants to be the first Whitfield to do it. He is close, painfully close. With the season winding down, his crew sits at just over 9,400 ounces, meaning they need close to 600 more in the final handful of cleanup days to make history. Every wash plant, every loader, every hour of daylight now matters more than it ever has. The camp wakes before sunrise, frost thick on the metal, breath visible in the cold morning air. Cole walks the yard with a mug of coffee going cold in his hand, running numbers in his head the way other men might recite a prayer. He knows the ground. He knows the gravel. What he doesn't know is whether the plants will hold together long enough to finish the job. 2 of his 3 wash plants have been running non-stop for weeks, and metal fatigue doesn't care about a season target. It just breaks when it's ready to break. At the center of the operation is Ridgeline, the camp's oldest and most battle-worn wash plant, a machine that has quite literally been rebuilt more times than anyone can count. It's been running double shifts through the coldest stretch of the year, chewing through pay dirt around the clock. Cole's foreman, a weathered 39-year-old named Ronan Vance, has run heavy equipment on this claim for 11 years, and he knows Ridgeline's quirks better than he knows his own truck. When the radio crackles that morning with a report of unusual vibration coming off the plant's mainframe, Ronan doesn't wait for a second call. He grabs his tools and heads straight up the hill. What he finds isn't good. A structural support tube running along the plant's main deck has split clean along an old weld line. The kind of crack that starts small and, if ignored, can bring a whole superstructure down under load. Ronan crouches beside it, running a gloved hand along the fracture, feeling the give in the metal that shouldn't be there. He radios down to Cole immediately, keeping his voice level even though his stomach has dropped. "We got a crack support tube on Ridgeline," he says. "It's bad, Cole. If we push through another week like this, it could go entirely." There's a long pause on the other end of the radio. Cole knows exactly what a full structural failure would mean this late in the season. Not just lost production, but potentially the end of the season altogether if the plant goes down hard enough. But he also knows that shutting the plant down for proper repairs could cost 2 full days. Days he flatly does not have if he wants any shot at 10,000 ounces. Can we weld it and keep running? Cole asks. "We can try," Ronan says. "But it's a patch job, not a fix. We're buying time, not solving the problem. It's a gamble every miner up here understands instinctively. Push the equipment past its limits and risk catastrophic failure. Or play it safe and watch the season slip away." Cole makes the call in about 4 seconds. "Weld it. Keep it running. Babysit it the rest of the way." Ronan gets to work with the camp's young welder, a 22-year-old named Desi Okafor, who spent the season proving himself far tougher than his age suggests. The 2 of them cut away the compromised section, brace the frame with scrap steel, and lay down bead after bead in temperatures cold enough to make the metal fight back. It's slow, careful, freezing work, made worse by the knowledge that a bad weld under this kind of stress could fail catastrophically with someone standing nearby. 2 hours in, Desi shifts his stance to get a better angle on an overhead seam, and a piece of the cutting slag drops loose, landing against the side of his boot. He yells, more surprised than anything, and yanks his foot back. But the damage is done. A nasty surface burn to the leather, mad, angry red skin already rising beneath it. Ronan is at his side in seconds, cutting the laces and easing the boot off while Desi grits his teeth and tries to play it down. I'm fine. Desi insists, though his face says otherwise. "You're not fine. You're just stubborn," Ronan mutters, already digging to the truck's first aid kit for burn gel and a proper dressing. He cleans the wound as best he can out there in the cold, wraps it, and tells Desi in no uncertain terms that this needs a real look once they're off the mountain. Desi nods, sits for exactly 4 minutes, and then gets back up to finish the last weld himself. Because in his mind, the job isn't done until it's done. It's the kind of grit that defines this camp. Everyone bleeding, freezing, and aching their way toward one shared number. By early afternoon, Ridgeline is stitched back together and roaring back to life. Pay dirt pouring through it once more. It's not a permanent fix. Everyone knows that, but it buys the days they need, and up here, days are the only currency that matters. Meanwhile, across the valley, Cole's second plant, a smaller unit the crew affectionately calls the Fox, is dealing with a very different kind of headache. Its radial stacker, the long conveyor that carries washed gravel away from the plant in piles that safely clear the operation, has developed a serious problem. Wet, slimy material has worked its way underneath the belt near the drive drum, causing the belt to slip uselessly against the metal instead of gripping and moving forward. Without the stacker running properly, the whole plant backs up within the hour, gravel piling into the hopper until the entire operation grinds to a halt. Cole's equipment operator, a sharp-eyed 28-year-old named Priya Nandan, spots the problem first and calls it in. "We're losing traction on the Fox's stacker," she says. "Material's packing in underneath the belt. It's not going anywhere until we fix it. The proper fix will be simple enough with the right equipment. Move the stacker for a few inches so it seats correctly against the feeder conveyor and stops material from working its way underneath. The problem is that doing it the conventional way requires an excavator, and every excavator on site is buried in stripping work that can't be paused without losing even more time. So Priya and Ronan come up with something riskier, manually walking the 100-foot stacker backward on its own wheels, using its hydraulic legs to lift one end, shift its weight, and inch it into position without heavy equipment at all. It's not a factory-approved procedure. It's the kind of on-the-fly engineering that keeps small operations like this alive, born out of necessity rather than any manual. The stacker, raised and top-heavy, becomes genuinely unstable the moment its stabilizing legs come off the ground, and everyone standing nearby understands that if it tips, it could crush whatever or whoever happens to be in its path. Have you ever actually done this before? Priya asks, only half joking, as Ronan climbs into position at the hydraulic controls. "Nope," Ronan admits, "but it's this or we lose the rest of the day, so let's find out." The crew clears back to a safe distance. Ronan eases the hydraulics forward, and the long structure begins to creak and sway, its massive frame rocking almost imperceptibly as its wheels inch backward across the frozen ground. It's a strange, tense kind of drama. No explosions, no shouting, just a quiet groan of stressed steel and the held breath of everyone watching. Inch by inch, the stacker walks itself into position. When Ronan finally sets the legs back down and steps back to check the alignment, there's a visible collective exhale across the crew. 3.5 inches. Priya calls out, tape measure in hand. That should be enough. They fire the Fox back up, and this time the belt grips clean, gravel moving smoothly up and away exactly where it should. It's a small victory, but on a claim running this close to the wire, small victories are the only kind that matter, because they add up to the big one everyone is chasing. As the week wears on, the entire operation shifts into a kind of controlled chaos. Every plant running at maximum capacity, every operator pushing machines they know are tired, every hour scraped for every ounce it can give. Cole makes the rounds constantly, checking in on Ridgeline's patch frame, on the Fox's realigned stacker, on his third and smallest plant working a shallow cut near the creek. He knows the machines are running on borrowed time. He also knows that borrowed time, spent wisely, is exactly what turns a good season into an historic one. Finally, on cleanup day, the whole crew gathers around the scales the way they have every week of this brutal season. Except this time the mood is different, sharper, more anxious, everyone doing quiet math in their heads before the numbers are even called. Cole stands at the center of it, arms crossed, jaw tight, trying not to let the hope on his face give too much away. They start with Ridgeline. The crew feeds material across the scale, watching the digital readout climb, 40, 80, 120, before settling on a solid number that draws a round of relieved nods. The patched-up plant, against every reasonable expectation, has pulled its weight all week long. Next comes the Fox, and this time nobody's holding their breath about the stacker. It ran clean the whole week thanks to Ronan and Priya's improvised fix. The scale climbed steadily, another strong number landing on top of the pile. Finally, the smaller Creekside plant adds its contribution, modest but steady, the kind of dependable production that's quietly carried this camp all season without ever making headlines. Cole does the math himself, pen scratching against a battered clipboard, and for a moment nobody says anything. Then he looks up, and there's something different in his expression. Not the guarded tension from earlier in the week, but something closer to disbelief. "We did it," he says, voice catching slightly. "We're over 10,000. The yard erupts. Ronan lets out a whoop and claps Desi on the shoulder hard enough to make the younger man wince, though he's grinning too wide to care about the bandaged foot underneath his boot. Priya throws both hands in the air, laughing, months of 18-hour days and frozen mornings finally cashing out into this one moment. Even Cole, usually so measured and careful with his emotions, lets himself grin the way he hasn't all season. It's a number his father never touched in 30 years on this ground. It's a number that, 6 weeks ago, seemed almost impossible given the equipment failures stacking up against them. But it's also a number that was never really about the gold itself. Not fully. It was about a crack support tube welded shut in freezing temperatures rather than accepted as a season-ending disaster. It was about a 100-foot stacker walked backward on a gamble because there was no excavator and no time to wait for one. It was about a young welder icing a burned foot for exactly 4 minutes before getting back to work because the job wasn't finished. It was about every operator on this claim deciding, over and over, that the easier path wasn't worth taking if the harder one got them closer to the goal. As the sun drops low over the valley and the temperature falls with it, Cole gathers the crew together one last time before the final stretch of the season winds down. There's still a little time left before the ground freezes solid, and with the target already smashed, some crews might be tempted to ease off, coast to the finish line, and call it a win. Cole has other ideas. "We got a bit of season left," he tells them, looking around at the exhausted, grinning faces around him. "Let's not leave anything in the ground. Let's see how far we can push this thing." Nobody argues. Nobody even hesitates. Because after a season like this one, after the cracks, the burns, the risky fixes, and the sleepless nights, this crew has proven something to themselves that no number on a scale can fully capture. They know now, with total certainty, exactly what they're capable of when everything is on the line. And with the season's biggest goal now sitting comfortably behind them, there's really only one question left hanging in the cold evening air. How much further can they push before winter finally calls time?